Alright, so I'm going to try to use this program that I just downloaded to go over the review. If you hear my kids, it's because I'm at home. I'll try and keep it quiet. We went over this problem in class, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the next one. And I started this one, but this one's talking about in behavior and meaning like as x approaches positive infinity, the graph is going up and to the right. As x approaches negative infinity, this graph is going down and to the left. The reason I know that is because I look at the leading coefficient, which is the highest degree right there, and it is a positive 4, so it's a positive cubic, so the right side is going to go up, and because it's odd, the left side is going to go down. Here, you look for the leading coefficient, which happens to be right here, and it's positive, so we know the right side is going to go up. It's odd, so the left side is going to go down. These two are the same so far. I might have my answer, but I'm just going to check. This one right here is my leading coefficient, and it is negative, so the right side is going to go down. It is even, so the left side is going to go down. And then the next one, the leading coefficient is this one because it has a 7. And it's negative, so the right side is going to go down, but because it's odd, the left side is going to go up. So the two functions that have the same in behavior would be the first two. Select all the expressions that are equivalent to the rational expression. What I would do first is I would factor it. So the factors are x plus 5, x minus 5, over 5 minus x. This right here is just trying to remind you, like, x can't be 5 because it would make it undefined. These actually cancel out right here, but they don't just cancel out and disappear. They cancel out and become negative 1, and they are left with an x plus 5. So that's this answer right here. The reason it's negative 1 is if you actually think of them, like, let's say you plug in 10. On top, you'd have 10 minus 5. And on bottom, you'd have 5 minus 10. That would cancel out to be 5 over negative 5, so that's how I'm getting the negative 1. Then the other option is, what if I were to distribute this? I would get negative x minus 5, which is right there. So there's your two answers. Alright, this problem is saying what is the positive solution to the equation and round to the nearest tenth. So maybe I'm going to get a decimal. This is a quadratic, and to find the solution, you either have to factor, complete the square, grouping, or quadratic formula. The first thing you have to do no matter what is set it equal to 0. So this 2x needs to go over to the left side, and you are left with x squared minus 2x, that is supposed to be 4x minus 18 equals 0. And if you had started trying to factor it, you probably would see that there's no factors that'll give you both of these numbers. So factoring is out. So you could either complete the square, or you could go ahead and use the quadratic formula, which would be negative b, so that would be positive 4, plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. You end up getting, if you do this right under here, this is 16 minus 4 times 1 times negative 18, so it ends up being 16 plus 72, so you get 4 plus minus the square root of 88 over 2, and the square root of 88 is 9.4, so I actually get 4 plus minus 9.4 over 2. If I minus it, I'm going to get a negative, so I'm not even going to bother with that one. But if I add it, I'm going to get 4 plus 9.4, which is 13.4. When you divide that by 2, you're going to get 6.7. So the answer is 6.7, and that's rounded to the 10th place. This one is a statistical model indicates that of the people who eat at food courts in the mall, 55% order Chinese food, 15% order Thai, and 30% order Italian food. Meanwhile, a case study of the visitors to the food court of a specific mall found that out of 600 visitors, 200 ordered Chinese, 250 ordered Thai food, and 150 ordered Italian. Which statement best explains whether or not the model is valid? What I'm going to do just to start is see, it says 55% order Chinese food. Well, 600 times 0.55 is 330. So 330, they got 200. Okay. I mean, I don't know if that's that far off, but let's see. The Thai food says it would be 15%. So 600 times 0.15 would be 90. That's a big difference. And then the last one would be 600 times 0.3, and you get 180. So the one that I chose was the second one because I said that it didn't accurately reflect the actual behavior. Because these numbers right here don't reflect the numbers up there. Okay, this one, some of you are cross-multiplying it, but that gets to be a little difficult. So what I did was, when you have the same denominators, you pretty much can ignore the denominators, and now you have the top to solve. Before you do that, though, one of the answers is talking about undefined. So undefined means when the bottom equals 0. So when will the bottom equal 0? And that would be not negative 8, because if you plug in negative 8, you'd get negative 16. So it would be both sides are undefined at positive 8, because if you plug positive 8 here, you get 0, and positive 8 here, you get 0. So that one is definitely an answer. Then I went ahead and took 60 equals x squared minus 4, added 4 to both sides. 64 equals x squared, took the square root. When you take the square root, you got to do plus minus 8 equals x. But remember, we already said one of the answers was undefined at 8. So the only option is negative 8, because positive 8 would be what we would consider extraneous. Alright, this one actually was a test question throughout the year, but what are the zeros? Well, I already gave you some of the factors. One of them is x plus 1, and then x squared plus 9, minus 9. If you set them equal to 0, you get x equals negative 1, and then here you get x squared equals 9, take the square root, and again, you get plus minus 3. So the zeros are negative 1, positive 3, negative 3. And it says Stephanie draws the graph. Select all the statements that are true. Be careful on this one, because the very first one is talking about where it crosses the y-axis, which would be the y-intercept. Or if you plug in 0, you should get negative 9. If you plug in 0, you get 0 plus 1 is 1. And then 0 minus 9 is negative 9. And then you get 1 times negative 9 is negative 9. So it actually works out to be true. The graph intersects the x-axis at negative 1, 0, and 9, 0. This one isn't true because we found that it crosses actually at 3, 0, and negative 3, 0. So that one's out. It says that the graph is a parabola. Well, if you were to FOIL this, you would end up getting x cubed, so that would make it a cubic, so that's out. And then the last one says the graph contains points of negative 1, 0, negative 3, 0, and 3, 0. I just wrote those there And then this one was true, so this would be true. All right. The graph of the sine function, what is the amplitude? The amplitude is half the distance from the max to the min, half. So that would be, half of it would be 3. And then the next one says, given that the midline of the sine function looks like f of x equals k, what is k? Well, the midline is in the middle of this function, right here, and that would be y equals, which is what they're saying right here where it says f of x, 4. On this one, a survey is taken. It wants to know what percent of responders does Vivian believe are biased. Well, there's a total of 180 responders, and the amount that are biased is 72. And if you do 72 divided by 180, you get 0.4, but it wants it to be percentages, so you would say 40%. Some people goofed and put 50% because it was that, but make sure you're careful about how many people responded. All right. Given a circle with a radius length of r and an arc length of r, what is the measure of the central angle? All right, the formula is S over radius. S meaning your arc length, which they said was r, over your radius, which they said was r. R divided by r is 1 radian is what we would get. The sum of the two polynomials is x cubed minus 2x plus 1. If one is this one, what's the other one? So that means if I were to take this one and I were to subtract this one, I'd get my other one. So that's x cubed minus 2x plus 1 minus 3x cubed minus 5x squared plus x plus 4. Hopefully y'all understand that I am changing my signs because it's minus. So then I get negative 2x cubed minus 5x squared minus x plus 5 for that part. Okay, so that's the answer to the first one. And I'm not quite sure how to erase here, so bear with me. Now it says it wants you to find the square. That means it wants you to take x, oh my goodness, x cubed minus 2x plus 1 and multiply it by itself. So that would be x to the 6 minus 2x to the 4th plus x to the 3rd minus 2x to the 4th plus 4x squared minus 2x plus x to the 3rd minus 2x plus 1. So that would leave me with x to the 6 negative 4x to the 4th 2x cubed 4x squared negative 4x plus 1. Hopefully I didn't make a mistake and not touch it. If so, I'm sorry. Alright. When I did this one, it says based on these constraints, determine whether or not she can buy each of the following. I just plugged them in. I was like, okay. K represents ink pens and G represents gel. So when I buy these 10, this very first one, it's saying that 10 plus 8 has to be greater than or equal to 20. Well, that fails it automatically, so no. Then the next one, 11 and 11, yes, that passes the first test. Okay. And then 3 times 11 is 33, plus 66 is 99. Is that less than or equal to 100? It passes both, so this is a yes. 9 plus 12 is greater than 20, so the first one passes. And then 27 plus 72 is 99, so it passes both. Next one passes the first one because 20 plus 8 is greater than 20. 3 times 20 is 60, plus 48. That's greater than 100, so that's a no. Alright, which equation represents a function that just goes 6 units up? This one goes left 6. This one goes right 6, remember, because it's inside of it. This one goes up 6, and this one goes down 6. So this is the answer right here. This one I didn't get a chance to quite cover with you, but just so you know, even functions are symmetrical over the y-axis, like that one. So this one right here happens to be even. Odd functions are symmetrical over the origin, like something like this. It needs to go through the origin, sorry. And so like the coordinate over here, right here, could be 2, 2, and maybe this one on the exact opposite is -2, -2. That makes it odd. Just so you know, sine function is odd. If you can recall, the cosine function, like that, is even. The minimum possible degrees, that's talking about, like, did it say, is this an x squared or is this an x cubed? And it's saying, what's the minimum? Well, it has to at least be 1, 2 degrees, because there's one turning point. This has to at least be a quadratic, so the minimum is 2. Alright. I'm not sure if y'all remember, but this means take G and plug it into F. So we're going to take e to the x and just plug it in. Plug it into the x. So we get 1 over e to the x plus c. And that's your answer. And look at the two different functions. You've got one that's a graph and one that's a quadratic. It says we're looking for the minimum value and the y-intercept, the x-intercept. So we can go ahead and find that the x-intercept for this one is -4, and the x-intercept for that one is -4. So that's true. I think I said x-intercept, but I was meaning the y-intercept and the y-intercept. I'm sorry. The x-intercept for this one looks like -0.5 and 2 point something. To find the x-intercept, you could either factor, complete the square, or quadratic formula. I'm going to factor. I see they have a 2 in common. So you take out a 2, you're left with x squared plus x minus 2. You get x plus 2, x minus 1. So your zeros are x equals -2 and x equals 1. Well, that is not the same, so this one is out. The minimum value, that's your vertex. So this vertex is 1, negative 6. The vertex for this one is going to be negative b over 2a. So negative 2 over 4 is negative 1/2. Whenever you plug that in, you should get, I think I got 4.5. Let me do it. Maybe I got negative 2.5. Just kidding. So negative 2.5. So my vertex is negative 0.5 and then down 2.5. So, and it's going to go like this. The minimum value of function 2 is greater than the minimum value of function 1. Is negative 2 greater than negative 6? Or I guess I should say the other way around. Is negative 6 greater than negative 2? It's kind of tricky, but negative 6 is actually smaller than negative 2. So this one's false. The value of the function, the minimum value of function 1 is greater than the minimum of 2. So 1 is negative 2 greater than negative 6? Yes. So it's these two right here. Find the product. Alright, so that's a FOIL problem. So that's 10 minus 2i plus 5i minus I squared. This is 3i. I squared is the same thing as negative 1, but because it's always already negative 1, it's plus 1. So you have 10 plus, so that ends up being 11 plus 3i. Using the Pythagorean identity, solve these. Okay, if you're looking for cosine, hopefully you remember that cosine equals the square root of 1 minus sine squared theta. So, cosine theta equals, it's actually plus minus 1 minus 0.8660 squared. This was on your tests also. 1 minus 0.8660 squared is 0.25004, but you got to do the square root of it. So that would be 0.5. It's 0.5000, so it also says that the angle is in quadrant 4, and this is talking about right here, is cosine positive or negative there? So that would be positive, so we ignore this negative, so it would be positive 0.5. The problem down here says if sine is 0.8660, which quadrants would give negative values? The quadrants that would give negative values would be right here. For negative value for cosine would be right here and here. So that's 2 and 3. Alright. This one was a little tricky the way it sounds, or the way it's worded. For me, I just saw that it was pi over 6, which to me, that's 30 degrees. And it's asking for the measurement of r. So from the y-axis over, that would be the same thing as your x value, or we know that as our cosine. So The only difference is it says the radius is 10. Well, on the unit circle, what is the cosine for pi over 6? On the unit circle, what is the cosine for this one right here? Remember, cosine is the x value. So hopefully you remember that. It is the square root of 3 over 2. And just so you know, the sine is 1/2. So the cosine for this one is square root of 3 over 2. But that's for the unit circle, with a unit circle has a radius of 1. This one has a radius of 10. So all I would have to do is multiply this bad boy by 10. And if you do the square root of 3 divided by 2, you get a decimal, multiply it by 10, you should get 8.66. That's the way I did that problem. Alright, a crow flying at an altitude of 81 feet spots an earthworm, and you get this function. It wants the zeros. I accidentally hit the home button, so we're going to have to upload this in 2 videos. Sorry about that. Anyways, to find the zeros, you could complete the square, do the quadratic formula, or you could just solve it. You could just say 0, 0, oh my, equals 81 minus 9t squared. Subtract 81, and you get negative 81 equals that. Divide by negative 9, you get 9 equals t squared. Do the square root, and you get plus minus 3. So positive 3, negative 3. What statement is true? It says at 0 seconds, it's 3 feet above the ground. So if you were to plug in 0, would you get 3? No, you'd get 81. At 3 seconds, the crow is at the surface. Right here, at 3 seconds, it says that's your 0. So yes, it's at the surface. Since the difference between the zeros is 6, it takes the crow 6 seconds to reach the field. No, that's not true. Because at 0 seconds, it's up here at 81, and it takes it 3 seconds to get to the field. Since the difference between the zeros is 6, the crow is 6 feet above the field at 0 seconds. We already said at 0 seconds, it is 81 feet. So the only answer that I found is this one. Well, growth and decay. Okay, remember, anything greater than 1 is a growth. So, greater than 1, growth. 1 minus that will be less than 1, decay. 0.85, less than 1, decay. 2, definitely a growth. Which of the following are imaginary numbers? Imaginary numbers is I. Well, this is definitely imaginary. It would be I square root 7. Square root 5, no. 9, the way we did that was we divided it by 4. And when you got a remainder, you would have a remainder of 1. So I to the first power is still I. So yes, this is imaginary. Then this one, when you divide it by 4, you get a remainder of 0. I to the 0 is 1, so it's not imaginary. You should only have these two selected. Maribel wants to determine the number of hours it takes the given culture to grow 114. So 114 equals 12 times 2t. You have to get the base by itself. So 114 divided by 12 is 9.5. Equals 2 to the t. You have to log it and divide. So log 9.5 divided by log 2 is 3.24. So 3.2. Consider this function. If g of x is the inverse of f of x, what is the value of g of x when x is 3? And then what is the value of g of x when x is 5? Okay. If you want, we could just find the inverse. That's when you do x equals the square root of y plus 5. You square both sides. X squared equals y plus 5. And then you get y to the negative 1, because that means inverse, equals x squared minus 5. Then you could plug 3 in, and you would get 9 minus 5 is 4. And if you plug 5 in, you get 25 minus 5 is 20. Or you could plug, if you know this is x, if you're trying to find it for the inverse, you could always just plug it into the y value and solve it like this. You'd get 9 equals x plus 5, and you'd still get the same answer as a 4. But I'm not sure if you'll remember that way. So I went ahead and found the inverse and then just plugged it in.